Hello everyone, nice to meet you. Today I'm going to present my dissertation plan. The title is Secular Ethics, the Buddhist Contribution for Cultural, Religious, and Political Tolerance. Hope you enjoy it.
The presentation will follow the source of my inspiration, the subject and its relevance, the research aims and objectives, the hypothesis, the driving questions, the chapter titles, and the brief description, the key resources, the contributions of the research, and a reflection on possible difficulties. The main source of inspiration for this research is my personal experience as a meditator and as a server. If I'm agitated, I realize that I cannot serve others wholeheartedly. And when I can serve others wholeheartedly, I am tranquil and I feel a tremendous reward of my service, a profound satisfaction and pleasurable mental state of generosity and bliss. So I was astonished with my first-person experience of the conclusion that serving oneself and serving others overlaps profoundly, and I believe that this can be a groundbreaking cornerstone for moral philosophy, and I wish to share such a wholesome understanding with others. Reasoning about ethics imposes significant challenges. If the values of each community and particular tradition are elevated and respected without judgment from outside standards, justice becomes merely conventional, a mere product of circumstance and with no critical character. Alternatively, a non-relativist initiative to search for the moral worth or the intrinsic good of the ends that an action serves generally leads morality to an essentialist and dogmatic enclosure. Although it has not been possible to elect an universal ethical principle or rule, paradoxically, it's unavoidable to reason about these principles and try to define the proper end or telos or some sort of essential nature of the object under moral debate. Most modern societies face this paradox, once many of them have pluralist moral and religious conceptions, being thus challenged to nurture a culture of tolerance in which all citizens and their beliefs are respected and yet some sort of shared values and morality principles are encountered. The ambition of this research is to explore if ethical conduct can have foundations beyond this paradox of dogmatic and nihilistic pitfalls and follow the hint that Buddhism offers to a secular ethics that can be experienced directly by anyone with adequate approach irrespective of their beliefs. There's no intention of collecting theoretical information about Buddhist ethics, but rather to highlight the secular aspect of Buddhist knowledge and identify its potential to sustain and be a tool for the cultivation of cultural, political, and religious tolerance. The background hypothesis of this research is that Buddhist ethics is based on a psychological cultivation and does not depend on conceptual frameworks, psychoethics. The exploration of Buddhist epistemology through the analysis of Paticca Samuppada, the middle path, right view, and emptiness indicates that there is a paramount category of knowledge which develops phenomenologically and is conducive to wholesome conduct, moral phenomenology. The research shall examine if the Buddhist epistemological framework can sustain ethics and tolerance and escape from both linguistic essentialism and nihilism. The driving questions of this research are: to what extent Buddhist epistemology offers ground for secularism? To what extent Buddhist ethics stand alone without the Buddhist conceptual framework and philosophical theories? Can the psychological cultivation promoted by Buddhist meditation be defined as a core base of Buddhist ethical conduct? What are the roles of faith and truth in Buddhist practice, especially Buddhist ethics? The first chapter is called Truth and War, and it aims to show an overarching philosophical perspective of the human quest for universal principles of truth. Firstly, I'd like to use Max Weber's theory to show how this quest for truth has migrated from mythology to religion and from religion to science. And according to Max Weber, it culminated in a paradoxical situation in which science explains everything in detail, but it fails to offer a broad understanding of life and its purpose. This overarching epistemological paradox exposed by Max Weber is also expressed by Kant's initiative to seek for a rational foundation of morality. He accompanies the shift from religious epistemology to scientific epistemology in the early modern age. Nevertheless, Schopenhauer, later on, presents an imponent criticism to Kant's rational morality, indicating it could not escape from the domain of dogmatism. Under his analysis, Kant's theory just shifted morality from a religious dogma, divine commandment, to a metaphysical dogma, categorical imperative. Nietzsche further amplifies the criticism on transcendental metaphysical concepts by indicating the boundaries of the subject-object grammar. The linguistic inability to capture reality removes the basis for the establishment of moral foundations. In his turn, Nietzsche ends up falling into the nihilistic pitfall. Hence, the human quest for meaning reached a broad epistemological conundrum in which both metaphysics and science are unable to sustain ethical values and morality. If in one side the crystallization of metaphysical truth in societies with diverse belief systems frequently leads to justification of violence, division, and wars, on the other side, the deconstruction of all transcendent truth, such as the Nietzsche's endeavor, removes all basis for moral judgment and propels chaos and relativist anarchy of individual desires and expressions. The second chapter is about how ontology intertwines with epistemology, and this is the core chapter of the research. The analysis of how the Buddhist concept of truth, presented through the middle path and Paticcasamuppada, proposes a wisdom that escapes from both essentialism and nihilism. Buddhist ontology evokes an epistemological shift that leads to the anti-metaphysical positioning of the Buddha of remaining silent in front of the existential philosophical questions systematically asked to him. The silence of the Buddha and the middle way of Paticcasamuppada are intertwined with Chatuskoti scheme, in which Nagarjunas unfold the concept of emptiness of everything, including emptiness. It's important to notice that if taken hermeneutically, even the conceptual frameworks of Buddhist narratives, such as Madhyamaka emptiness or Sarvastivada Abhidhamma, both are still not immune from nihilism and essentialism. For this reason, the radical epistemological position of the Buddha should remain at the center, which is the modes of engagement with knowledge have ultimate importance in relation to the concepts themselves. In other words, key importance is given to experience, or key importance is given to the way we engage with concepts. Hence, Buddhist epistemology suggests an experiential category of knowledge as the middle path, in which this phenomenology is based on not clinging to any view. Chapter 3 will show how psychology is intertwined with ethics. It will start indicating how the silence of the Buddha and the concept of emptiness of Nagarjuna's theory indicate the linguistic limits to tackle existential questions. The Theravada Abhidhamma will be taken as a basis to understand how mental states are inseparable from intention and from moral action. This inseparability leads to the conclusion of the overlap between benefiting oneself and wholesome conduct, benefiting others. Thus, the critique of language, fostered by Buddhist epistemology and the Abhidhamma psychology, should be able to sustain ethics without conceptual framework, indicating a new domain for secular ethics. The domain is the psychological and emotional modes of engagement with action. At the closure of this chapter, this moral phenomenology will be examined in both Shantideva and Buddhaghosa. The fourth chapter shall examine the interconnection of ethics and politics by highlighting few historical examples that can illustrate how the secular ethics mindset was expressed in Buddhist culture. Few passages will be examined. For example, Anathapindika's Buddha's advice given systematically to Anathapindika, suggesting he should keep the financial support to his previous religious teachers. The other example might be Emperor Ashoka, known to be a Chakravarti, an ideal ruler, and how he advocated for political and religious tolerance. And finally, the harmonious coexistence of Savakayana and Mahayana monks. They used to live together in the same dwellings at Nalanda monasteries. Mirroring the first chapter, the last chapter was called Truth and War. The last chapter of conclusion is called Silence and Compassion, and it should articulate the core outcomes of the previous chapters and conclude in which ways Buddhist epistemology and psychology can sustain and be a tool for secular ethics and tolerance. If the result is understood as some sort of elevation of Buddhist knowledge above other religions, it would be profoundly misunderstood. On the contrary, the expected outcome of this research should be the indication of a secular framework of wisdom which escapes from any conceptual or sectarian framework, including Buddhist narratives. The result might be modest once it's not possible to universalize phenomenological subjective experience. So it surely would never substitute the law system. It just maybe add a complementary personal perspective for learning ethics and self-cultivation.
Letting go of the truth, letting go of the quest for the truth, in silence, cultivating our minds, maybe generosity and compassion can spring.
The key resources of each chapter are listed below. This won't be presented in detail due to time constraint. There's no naive expectations about the contributions of this research. It won't be found the solution for social issues, rather a modest contribution of indicating the existence of a personal tool for self-evaluation and moral training. The research also will highlight the limitations of conceptual frameworks to promote tolerance, and maybe it will open a perspective on the personal gain of altruistic action. It is thus about a simple exposition on how mental cultivation can be a way to practice and learn ethics. The main challenge of this research is related to the size of the chapters. So once each subject is very deep, I have a challenge to be very concise, especially on the first chapter that is potentially that can be potentially very big. And I have as an option the idea of maybe removing the fourth chapter. The core chapters are chapter 2 and 3. If those get too big, I might remove chapter 4. So these are probably the main challenges I'll be facing on this research.
Thank you very much for your attention. Your feedback is most welcome. See you on the discussion forum.